Please give a warm welcome to Michael Douglas. Well, great honor to have you here, Michael. When I introduced the film, I said that you have an uncanny knack for choosing projects that reflect public concerns. You know, I mentioned traffic and fatal attraction and China syndrome. And, you know, democracy is dangling on a little thread. And this film, I mean, this TV show captures you know, a time where democracy was dangling on a little thread. Is that something that attracted you to the project?
Not initially, because you have to remember, we filmed this in early 2022, but certainly was kind of aware of it. But the more that I got involved in it, yes, I mean, it had an amazing comparison sort of to what's going on today. It certainly gave me a whole new appreciation about the creation of democracy, just how fragile the system is, and meant a lot. And as much as John Adams in later episodes you'll see, and Ben Franklin went at it, well, a lot, you know, really went at it. It was always in the pursuit of democracy. In other words, it was not trying to kill the other person or the other party, which seems to be what's happening now, but was, you know, what was best for democracy. So yeah, it's had a lot of echoes. Not to mention the fact that there's some parallels I've seen between Ukraine and Russia, and England and the United States at that time.
When I first started watching the show and going like, oh, I don't want another history lesson, but the show plays like a thriller. You know, there's cat and mouse and there's spies, and was that something that you guys brought to but it was already in the story?
No, it was already in the story. I mean, first of all, just digesting Franklin, you know, and all that he had accomplished. I'm sure many people are well aware of it, but I had to refresh my memory. I mean, here's a guy that was brought up by basically lower class. His father was a candle maker. He had only 2 years of proper education. Only went to school for 2 years, and was a workaholic. And so, besides his career as a writer and a publisher, as an editor, then we know he created the University of Pennsylvania. He created the libraries. He started the post office.
Spectacles.
You know, all that. Then as an inventor, we have, besides electricity, the spectacles, all of that. So he did a tremendous amount, and now is integrally involved with the creation of our new country. And so in July 4th, 1776, they declared their independence. I don't know what they were thinking, because, I mean, to think back, they had very little money. There's no military, this and that. And Franklin was 70. So I'm trying to think, 70 in 1780s. I mean, what is that? I know it's got to be older than Joe Biden, you know. so I mean, you know, so they decided, they got together and decided to send him, because he did have this sort of, was very well known around the world and had a certain charm about him. Said, you're going to France. We got to get an ally.
But he had no diplomatic training whatsoever.
He had none whatsoever. And so that was Stacy Schiff's book, which was just all based upon, it was called The Great Improvisation. So he went over, I mean, he'd been politically involved because he had been the governor of Pennsylvania when dealing with England, and had been over in London as the governor and had a lot of debates and all of that, but really had none, didn't know the reality. So he went over there, and it was a huge gamble. And the truth be told, and I know we sort of know it, but the United States would not exist if it was not for France.
Right.
And I mean, that's something we all have to remember when we travel, go over for visits, whatever we may think. It was an extraordinary gesture that they made.
Yeah, watching the series made me appreciate France, you know, far more than I did before. he was like the ultimate seducer. I mean, I don't want to spoil what's up ahead, but guys, you know history. Like every scene he's in, he's like the ultimate seducer.
He sort of found his way and his pattern. I mean, he was a rock star, so that really helped. He could be humble and all of that, and he was surprised how he was welcomed in France. So he had that ability. He had an eye for the ladies, liked to imbibe a fair amount, but was so bright and so smart, and was dealt and weaved his way through this intricacy of British spies, French who may have been against him, and the series is a pretty good idea of showing what happened in the 8 years and all that he accomplished. I mean, you have to remember, mind you, that France, went broke after dealing with Franklin, and the revolution happened soon after in France. But for a guy representing a democracy to go over to a country that was a monarchy, fighting another one, and to get the kind of response that he got, you need a lot of guile.
There was something that I found fascinating in your performance in this, is that in every scene, you seem to be looking at both sides of the story, both sides of whatever subject brings up. I never know what card you're playing. You're looking at both sides. Is that part of what you discovered about Franklin?
Yeah, that is. He was a true logician. He reduced everything to the lowest common denominator, and he'd like to also, if he didn't know exactly who he was dealing with, he would present both sides, so he wouldn't alienate that person, and take one approach and find out that there was something else was going on. I guess I'm just going to share production-wise, because one of the first things that happened when they came to me with this was Ben Franklin, and pull out $100 bill and you look at it and go, I don't know, man, I don't know. It's just going to be. So, we started, I said, let me do some makeup tests. And we did some, we got the appliances and all of this stuff, and we got it figured it looked pretty good. But meanwhile, it took about 2.5 hours. And then this, for me, as an actor, is the producing hat, my producing side. So I said, all right, wait a minute. It's a 45-minute drive out to the studio. It's 2.5 hours in makeup. It's at least half an hour, 40 minutes to take it off. Then it's 40 minutes back to the studio. I said, they're going to kill me. I mean, they're going to be waiting for me, And I'm always like punctual, want to be on time. I said, I can't do this. And then the other thing I thought about was, I worked with Richard Plepler, one of the producers, on a show called Behind the Candelabra, where I played Liberace a few years ago.
Best Actor Emmy.
Yeah. But that was, that was a live person we all knew about. You heard his voice, you know what he looked like, and all of that. So there was a need to, to kind of create the image. But with Franklin, we don't know what he sounds like. We have a few portraits. All of his portraits were painted by women. So he seemed like he was very open to having them take his make a painting. And so I said, this is 8 hours. And, I've been around now doing this for over 50 years. I said, I don't know if the audience is going to go with me in complete Ben Franklin makeup for 8 hours. It may have handled it for like 2, but sometimes you have to have a persona kind of carry the character through. And so that was one of the kind of early strategic decisions we decided about.
You'd never done a period piece until this. Why did it take this long, and what was it about this that lured you into doing a period piece?
Well, it was something I realized, late, Roger, that all my films were contemporary. Everything I'd done in life is contemporary. So I guess the last few years, I started doing things like the Kaminsky method, which was more kind of comedy, but I was really kind of, thank you. Thanks for it. Either way, thank you. It's so nice to be here, see everybody, I spent a lot of time here, so very nice of you all to come out. Do appreciate that. Very nice. And then, then I did this. Then I never did a green screen picture. So I said, well, and then the Marvel world came up, and it was fascinating just to see how you act when there's nothing there, you know. We have a whole new appreciation. So then this came up. I said, well, you've never done a period. You know, I've never done a period picture. I did kind of a World War II one film, but it's all been contemporary. So I said, yeah, let's, you know, Ben Franklin. So, you know, the rare chance where you have a chance to study a character, learn about history, all the joys that you liked. And particularly, I enjoy doing productions worldwide. I love working with different actors, different production teams from around the world. I'm the only American actor in the film. Mm-hmm. It's all French actors and English actors.
Yeah.
And it's the joy and the reminder of filmmaking that you just, even though some of them did not speak English, but you do not. You just have the same language. Mm-hmm. You all speak together and enjoyed it.
So much to ask you. The costumes, I noticed that there is a very specific color palette to Franklin. Like there is like grays and everybody around you is wearing big wigs and colors and feathers and he remains, you know, very simple clothing. You know, can you tell us about that and how that helped you with the character?
Well, historically, in reality, is that Ben Franklin really represented the beginning of the middle class. He was the beginning of the middle class. As I said, he came from a lower. His father's family was not upper class by any means, and he then used that as his pretense. So he always dressed simply. He didn't wear a wig. And this is part of his signal about, you know, about the middle class, about people you don't have to just be upper class and poor. So that was a large part. The costumes were spectacular, but that was an obvious effort that he made to be of the people for them. We had a tough time with the costumes because at the same time, I guess it was also an Apple series, Ridley Scott had Napoleon over there, so we were scurrying around Europe trying to get enough costumes. But I got such a kick out of some of those. I mean, I used to just awe at the extras. You know, all the extras, everyone was just, you look at each extra in this picture, they're all perfectly done, and they had all the makeup on, the white makeup on, and the wigs. They were just, it was so beautifully done. I'm very proud. The production was the best produced picture I'd ever been involved with. It really had been. They did a wonderful job.
Stunning. I told you outside that I saw it on my little computer at home, and then I took a little peek, and it's just so stunning, gorgeous.
Yeah.
You know, tell us about shooting in Versailles. You know,
Right. Well, the toughest thing we had, I mean, we were just so fortunate. I mean, Tim Van Patten, the director, did just a wonderful job. The toughest thing we had was getting the script ready in time, because we did what's called block shooting. So block shooting is, let's say we have a scene we have 8 hours, and we have a scene in a movie theater that happens over 3 of the episodes. So you shoot all of those scenes over the 8 episodes, all the scenes in the theater at the same time. So you then have to have pretty much all the scripts done before you start shooting, right? So you know where the scenes are, and then, so that was a bit of an issue. So we were jamming to get the scripts, you know, finished in time to know where and what we were shooting. But of course, we never got tired of Versailles. And we filmed Versailles on Monday. That was the day they were closed. And we went around, and I can't remember in the first episode, do I meet Louis XVI, or this would be the second?
No, you don't, but we do meet him in the first episode.
So, you know, we were shooting in Versailles, we're going up the stairway, and we're going in, and we're shooting in Louis XVI's bedroom.
Yeah.
We're shooting in, you know, it's like, I just couldn't believe it. And the place is spectacular, the locations that they found. So Paris was wonderful. I had a just a lovely time there, and the crew and the actors were as good as anybody I had worked with. So that's what, makes it good. And you look around, again, if I'm acting with people, I can't help myself, but I see other people that are so good. All the cast. And the first week, there was a blonde lady on the set. And I said, well, she's the casting lady. She said, give me a hug. Please, give me a hug. I said, this is the greatest job the cast you put together.
Yeah,
it's just spectacular.
It's later on in the series, you meet Marie Antoinette in Le Petit Trianon, and you're talking about settings. That scene of Franklin and Marie Antoinette in Le Petit Trianon is stunning.
It's beautiful. Right there at the Versailles and the other locations. Yeah, no, they were beautiful. I have good memories.
Normally, when we watch something like this, the French speak English, but you guys made the choice of we hear the French language and the subtitle, then it goes back and forth. Tell us about that choice, and actually you, from an actor's point, having to, deal with, listen to the language.
Well, I was so proud of Apple. I just thought when I heard that they were going to do it, it was always our intention to want to do it. But what's happened in the last few years is we now, the American audience that's used to all of our movies being subtitled around the world, have now had a few experiences both in television and on the big screen with foreign language pictures and subtitles that have done very well. So I think people are more open, to it. I think just because of social media, everybody reads subtitles much more quickly. So that was an issue. It was perfect for me because Ben Franklin is supposed to speak poor French, and there's nobody better to do that than I did. Noah Jupe is a lovely young actor. And I really enjoyed working with him. And he didn't speak a word. I must say, I was he had a little more free time than I did. But by the time we left, he was reeling it off. I mean, he got really good. So it was kind of a natural piece, and it seems to work out. Did it bother anybody here? It seemed to, it kind of just adds to the verisimilitude and everything to have the French actors and scenes between them speaking French.
I'm glad you brought up Noah Jupe, who plays Temple, your grandson. I mentioned to you outside that what I loved about the show is that it caught me off guard. It's a love story between you and your grandson, and it gets richer as the series goes on. Tell us about that relationship.
Yeah, well, Ben Franklin this is his. Temple was his grandson. He had a son, William, but William and Ben had a total clash because William stayed as a loyalist. He was governor of New Jersey, and when independence started, he stayed with the Brits and was basically incarcerated, was put into jail, and his father, me, approved it, accepted it. So he was, there was a side of Ben that was a little vindictive, and he had his peccadillos. So I then take William's son, Noah, almost to make him my son, on this trip. And historically, he actually took his 2 kids, but we simplified some things. And he comes over there, and this is a chance for him to watch and learn and everything else, but he gets seduced. As you'll see, I'll be giving it away a little bit. He'll be seduced by the French court. He loves all this stuff, and he gets up with some young bucks, Lafayettes, and a couple of other young guys and everything like that. And over the 8 years, almost 9 years that Franklin was there, he lost Temple to the French court. So when he went home, Temple stayed in France. So it was
But their relationships keeps growing, and that's what's so rich about the series, is that it's a love story
Yeah.
between you and your
No,
grandson.
it was certainly someone I felt I could teach, but then I learned so much from him. And then ultimately we broke up. It's true. With all the love and affection I had for him, he went off on
Yeah,
on
it's
his
rare
own.
to see, though, a grandfather-grandson, such a close,
Right.
developing friendship. You mentioned picadillos. There is this cheekiness to Franklin, the sex and flatulence and all this, like,
Well, they were, meanwhile, after the first, but back home, Americans were getting killed. The British were, the British were, attacking. They were like they were losing the war, and they kept asking, well, what's going on? And I think he talks about it, that it's sort of a gracious, he treats it like a much, normal, easy way of dealing with people and everything in a gracious way. So they kept coming, what's going on? What are you doing? He was there 8 years. And so he immersed himself in the society. He had his girlfriends. He had the ones that he wished he could, but they were married. And he had this life, and they were getting nuts until, as you'll see in later episodes, when you see them all, John Adams comes over to take over because he thinks nothing's going on. But the reality is he kept, I think that it was an incredible amount. Was it 13 million, 15 million, or it couldn't have been billion. So it must have been $15 million, but it almost broke the bank for France.
I don't want to spoil the rest of the show, but he's constantly, it's like almost like a game. And then, it reveals that, he was ahead of everybody.
He was not knowing, the audience gets to know who the spies are, and you don't really get an impression that Franklin really does know, but he does. And he was just a sly, obviously a very, very bright man, a Sly Fox. But again, you talked about his dress, Roger, it was the same thing, but he attempted to be unassuming. He was not a show-off. And so he embraced, because everybody was like a movie star who was so open to everybody and everything. And so he embraced everybody. And that way he kind of sucked them in.
You've given us so many amazing performances. This, to me, is such a complex performance you give us. I mean, that you've only seen one episode. Trust me, when you see 8, it just keeps getting richer and richer. Did you find it challenging that this is one of the most complex characters I've ever had to play, or was just a walk in the park?
Yeah, I was. I was nervous. Well, first of all, what happened is I had some health issues early on, and this was an 8-month shoot. And about the 3rd week of the filming, I had my gallbladder removed. And before that, I'd had some stones taken out of my bile duct. So, and I'm also a producer, so I'm conscious of, what this means. But I jumped back after a weekend, took one Monday off. I came back to work, with the idea of, okay, I'll be fine. And I didn't feel too good, And then you realize you get a little older, it takes a little longer to recuperate, I don't know what I was thinking. So I'm looking ahead. I got 6 months of shooting to go. I'm going, man, I don't know. And I sort of juggled that. I said, well, insurance can cover. They got to replace me. But we started, going along, and progressively I got better at it. But I was having, a tough time, not so much about the plot, but the character, And then I realized how much you had going for you. In other words, how much the audience knew about you beforehand, which made it, a little easier. And then, of course, the best is having wonderful actors to work with. I've always made a point of wanting actors that are better than I am, or I feel that way. So because I look at them and say, well, they're doing good. If I'm with them, I'm no problem. I'm in good shape,
Yeah, you alluded one of the things I find it fascinating about him is that he could be so warm to people, and then on a dime he would become cold or harsh. Is that something that you read about him, and then how were you able to incorporate that dichotomy of the character?
I did. As much as Stacy's book was very good about the historic background of Franklin, it was really Walter Isaacson's biography on Franklin that gave me the most kind of character pieces and bits. And my take, actually, I talked to Walter about it, and he loved Franklin. I think there was a darker side to him. Let's just say I would never want to have been married to Ben Franklin. I mean, for openers, and he could snap. He could, he would snap. There's a patience and all of that, but then underneath it there was always remind me a little bit of my father. This sort of underlying, energy and kind of strength and darkness, and you find your spots. But it is hard when you're doing this block, and in one day you may be doing scenes from 3 different episodes over 8 years. And he had an issue with the gout, which plays up throughout the show. And to try to remember where you are on your gout, how bad is it? All right, how bad, because you forget. I had an assistant. I said, just you keep reminding me where we are with the gout. So all of a sudden, I'm not limping around the second episode. So
speaking of timeliness of the film, I want to ask you about the Chevalier character that you guys did not meet. Is later on you meet this fascinating character. I had to, after the character popped, I had to Google and read so much about it. Can you tell us about
the Chevalier d'Eon? The Chevalier d'Eon was a guy in drag. I mean, he was a guy. He was a soldier, but he dressed as a woman, and a lot of snickering going on about the whole thing. But it was such a courageous, brave guy, and was very supportive of Franklin when they first came in, and they made a lot of nasty jokes about Franklin and the Chevalier. But it was a true character, and a wonderful actor played it. I brought my notes because I knew that if you're going to ask about some of the French actors, I can't remember all their names exactly. So,
yeah, but it was just so fascinating that part of the story. I mean, it happened.
But it just comes out of the blue.
It comes out of the blue, but it's so timely, and it's so it feels like the whole series feels so contemporary.
Yeah, no, that was. Yeah, really happy with that in terms of the relationships of what's going on now, and hopefully it'll be just a healthy reminder of how precious democracy is, and how we have to protect it. It's not something you could just let it go. You always have to be working at it.
Yeah. So what's next? What are we working on now?
Nothing. I'm really on. Actually, I'm kind of semi-retired after doing this in 2022, over 8 months. I said, I'm 80 this year. Okay. So yeah. Thank you.
Well, you look fantastic.
Well, I feel good, but I changed a few things after this thing. So I changed the diet and did some other stuff. But I took 23 off, and had a great time. And I'm well into 24, and I got no plans. So I'm having a good time. I'm really happy to be back here. Very nice. My dad was kind enough. Maybe many of you know, I went to UCSB, and then but my first marriage. There we go, Gauchos. And then my first marriage, I lived here for many years, and my family ended up my brother came up here, and then my father came up, had a house, and just before he passed away, he was really kind. He says, "I want you to have the house." Yeah. So he had a weekend house over here, and so Catherine and I kind of fixed it up. I mean, it was great to have it, but it needed a new kitchen and floor. And so I'm really happy to be here a lot of the time. Catherine knows how much I like it here. She's having a great time, too.
Well, we're so happy that you came tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Watch Franklin in 3 weeks. 8 episodes. It's amazing.
Take care.